watching Daytime Tea Time with Candice. It's time to pour this tea, stir this tea, and sip this tea. Let's get right into it. Alright, you guys, we're about to talk about Empire actor Jussie Smollett. Okay, you guys, this Jussie Smollett story just gets crazier and crazier. Jussie Smollett has officially been arrested and charged as a suspect in a criminal investigation by the Chicago police for filing a false police report. Here's his mugshot that was recently released by the Chicago Police Department. Once Jussie Smollett was officially classified as a suspect in this criminal investigation, Jussie Smollett and his lawyers arranged for Jussie to turn himself into the police department, and that's what he did this morning around 5 a.m. Now, after he turned himself in, the Chicago Police Department actually held a press conference and explained all of the reasons why Jussie Smollett was arrested and why he is a suspect. And you guys, the new information that they have revealed is that they have a check that Jussie Smollett allegedly paid to the two suspects who attacked him. So the Chicago Police Department is saying that Jussie Smollett paid these two men $3,500 total, not $3,500 each, $3,500 total to stage this attack. Not only do they have the payment as proof, they also have phone records that shows that Jussie Smollett spoke to these two African men an hour before and an hour after the attack. And not only is the police saying that Jussie Smollett paid these two men to beat him up, they're also saying that Jussie Smollett's injuries to his face were self-inflicted. They're saying that he scratched himself to make it look better. I want you guys to hear exactly what the police department had to say in this press conference.
So, Mr. Smollett is the one that orchestrated this crime. They became cooperating witnesses in the 47th hour of their 48-hour hold time. So now they are witnesses to what he did. So he has to be accountable for what he did. He orchestrated this. Yeah, we have evidence that we have the check that he used to pay them. So the $3,500 was for the two of them in total, and then $500 upon return. So of course it was staged. The brothers had on gloves during the staged attack, where they punched him a little bit. But as far as we can tell, the scratches and bruising that you saw on his face was most likely self-inflicted. We have the phone records that clearly indicate that they talked to each other quite a bit before the incident, after the incident, and while they were out of the country. So we know that they talked at least an hour or so before the attack, an hour or so after the attack, and then while they were out of the country. We know that they were talking. So one of the brothers worked on Empire, so they had a relationship, an association. So he probably knew that he needed somebody with some bulk, and he knew them. They had a previous relationship, so that's probably the only reason he chose them. Well, to be perfectly honest, from the very beginning we had some questions about it. But as I said, we gave Mr. Smollett the benefit of the doubt all the way up until that 47th hour of the 48 hours we could hold those two individuals, because we just didn't have the total package to support that it was a hoax. So when you heard me coming out saying we are treating him like a victim, that was the truth, because at that time that's what he was. And I think anybody that reports a crime deserves the Chicago Police Department to treat them in that fashion until we have solid evidence to prove otherwise. The boy in the back. So let me reiterate again. You know, you all heard me say consistently that we were treating Mr. Smollett like a victim, and we did. We might have had some peculiarities with the case, as we do with most cases. So it wasn't until the 47th hour of their 48-hour hold time that we could legally hold them in custody that it took a change. So we gave him the benefit of the doubt up until that 47th hour. But when we discovered the actual motive, quite frankly, it pissed everybody off, you know, because we have to invest valuable resources. A lot of what I want you all to really understand is when you all put things out there into the universe that's not actual facts, then it causes us to have to chase all that stuff down. Those are resources and time spent that we'll never get back, that we could utilize for another investigation. And let me be clear about something. The shootings and homicides in this city were not impacted at all by this particular investigation. And again, we give the same amount of give resources to every hate crime that's reported in this city. I think that they knew where that one camera was, but unfortunately it didn't capture the event. So I believe that Mr. Smollett wanted it on camera, but unfortunately that particular camera wasn't pointing in that direction.
Alright, you guys, so you heard that. The Chicago Police Department are saying that they have all of this proof that Jussie Smollett did orchestrate the attack that happened to him. They're saying that they have the actual $3,500 check that Jussie Smollett gave to these two African men to beat him up. They're saying they have phone records that prove that they were all talking an hour before and an hour after the attack. And also, I don't know if you guys saw this going around, but there's actually a videotape that shows the two Africans going into this like corner store, buying MAGA hats, buying ski masks. So that right there is video evidence that these two Africans are the ones that attacked Jussie Smollett. And once they became in police custody, they did tell that Jussie Smollett paid them to attack Jussie. Now, a lot of people were confused about how the police even found these Africans. Well, during the press conference, the police actually explained how they found them, and they explained that the Africans' lawyers are the ones that said that they are actually victims. Now, that's the part I do not agree with. No, you accepted money to stage a fake attack, so you are not a victim, okay? Jussie and the two Africans all should be arrested right now, but ironically, Jussie is the only one in jail. I'm just saying. But I want you guys to hear exactly what the police had to say. They gave extreme details, and I want you guys to listen very closely.
As you all know, on the early morning of February 29th at 2 o'clock in the morning, Jussie Smollett reported that he was the victim of a hate crime. Detectives responded to the incident and interviewed him eventually at Northwestern Hospital, where he reported to us that the two offenders yelled racial and homophobic and political statements at him and beat him, put a noose around his neck, and threw bleach on him, and then fled from the area. We learned at the time that Jussie was not hurt, other than scratches on his face, maybe some bruising, but no broken ribs or serious injuries. So we started a full-scale investigation into this hate crime, a very serious crime anywhere. We quickly found two persons of interest on video that we believed were the likely offenders in this case. We initially put out a seeking to identify, and we got this out in a community alert. We then started searching the area for video cameras and witnesses that could help us with our investigation. During that time frame, we interviewed over 100 individuals in a canvass of the area and a follow-up canvass as our investigation expanded. We located approximately 35 of our Chicago Police pod cameras in the area and in the areas that we determined these two persons of interest fled. We additionally found over 20 private sector cameras, and I got to say that was super useful in this investigation. The city came together to investigate and help the police with this crime. It was because of these pod cameras, our investment into technology in the city of Chicago, and the great assistance from the community in giving us those other cameras that led us to a really solid timeline of where our two persons of interest went. So in short, we were able to track them initially forward. So after the crime, we were able to see that they fled in a particular direction and eventually got into a cab. Our investigators located that cab, interviewed the cab driver, got some video out of that cab, followed that cab using all of these surveillance cameras that are located throughout the city, the pod cameras, to an area up on the north side where they abruptly stopped the cab, got out, and walked on foot. Again, the community came together to provide us with security footage from their private cameras. So at that point, we then started tracking these two persons of interest backwards to where they came from. So we followed them walking around and eventually back to where they had gotten out of a cab. So that was another individual that we had to interview and another individual where we sought video. We continued to track that cab back to the point where the cab was tracked down by our two persons of interest in a rideshare car. We then followed up on the rideshare, and that was the lead that we needed in order to identify the two persons of interest. At that point, we had a real good timeline of where these two people went. We were able to put a name to both of these individuals, and it was at that time that we started looking at where they went right after this event. We tracked them to going to O'Hare Airport and jumping on a flight to Nigeria. Our investigation led us to determine that they had purchased a round-trip ticket with them returning to Chicago on the 13th, so approximately 2 weeks after the incident. So that gave us a couple of weeks to try to continue to follow up on any investigative lead that would help us try to determine what happened in this incident. So while we were waiting for them to return, we executed over 50 search warrants and subpoenas, working with our partners in the state's attorney's office, phone records, social media records, and records on individuals to help us illuminate the likely facts that occurred in this event. So moving forward to the 13th, we had a team in place working with the FBI, Customs, and our partners out at the airport. Airport police helped us tremendously, and we were able to locate and identify these two individuals, these two persons of interest, when they entered back into the country at Customs. We took them into custody. We read them their rights, and they both initially asked for an attorney. They were brought to Area Central Detective Headquarters so that we could process them, and it was at that time that their attorney showed up. I think you've all seen her on the news the last couple of days. She came to us, and after speaking with these two people of interest, she said that something smelled fishy. She did not think that they were the offenders as were reported. She worked with us very, very closely to get to the point where she came to me and said, "You really need to talk to these guys. I'm going to allow them to give you a video interview with us present, and we're going to have you hear their story. They are not offenders, they're victims." It was at that time that this investigation started to spin in a completely new direction. You've heard some of the statements that their lawyer, Ms. Schmidt, has made, and it was at that time that we took the information that these two individuals provided to us, and we substantiated the timeline and the details that they gave to us in this interview. We were able to substantiate those things. We worked very, very closely with the state's attorney's office. We had been working very, very closely with the state's attorney's office for over a week at that point, and it was then on the 15th, Friday the 15th, after approximately 47 hours of them being in custody and hours of them meeting with us and telling us their story and documenting their story, did we release them without charging? And I classified them no longer as suspects or persons of interest and as witnesses. So as is typical with any investigation, one would typically lock these witnesses into a grand jury statement.
Okay, so you guys heard that. Now, I haven't given my personal opinion on this, you guys, because honestly, I'm still going back and forth in my head because a lot of this still doesn't make sense. Okay, so it's very clear that this attack on Jussie Smollett was orchestrated. Clearly, it was orchestrated. But where I get confused is where the police, like he said at the very end, the police said that those two Africans are no longer persons of interest. They are no longer witnesses. They took their statement and then now they arrest Jussie. I just want clarification to understand, why isn't all of them arrested? If they all took part in this hoax, why is Jussie Smollett the only one arrested? As a fan, I'm still disgusted that Jussie Smollett would even do this, but with all of this proof that they're saying that they have, I believe that Jussie Smollett should be arrested. But I'm just saying he needs to be arrested, and so do those two Africans and anybody else who was involved. I'm just saying. But alright, y'all, I'm done with this. I want to know what y'all think. What do y'all think about Jussie Smollett now officially being arrested and charged for filing a false police report? Let me know what you think. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and I'm going to catch you in the next one, alright? Bye.